Our annual summer barbecue party was in full swing. There were probably more than 50 people present who would soon have their fill of food. Everyone seemed to be having a great time. They swam, played one or more of the many games on the lawn, danced to music from the speakers on the makeshift dance floor, or crowded around the bar. The whirring of the margarita blender, constantly changing speed as the bartender desperately tried to keep up with demand, filled the air. Some were simply making small talk to catch up with couples they hadn't seen in a while sipping on their favorite ice-cold cocktails. Small children were in the pool, including our two teenagers. Older teenagers showed off to each other or lay seductively around the pool in sun loungers. Dads looked at teenage girls in bikinis from behind sunglasses, thinking something illicit about them. Some mothers also glanced furtively at the strong young men, but no one cared. Honestly, I think all the wives were anxiously wondering what kind of animals their husbands would turn out to be in bed this evening after staring at the young Nubian ladies all day. In truth, after so many years of marriage, they no longer cared what turned their husbands on with their daddy bodies, as long as something turned them on. Of course, all the couples had a look but don't touch policy when it came down to it. Apparently, everyone except my wife. How did I find out that my beloved wife was cheating on me? It all started a few weeks ago when I suspected that something was wrong in my marriage. Little things aroused my suspicions. But after almost 17 years of marriage, you can just sense when something is wrong. Of course, this was one really serious thing that completely alarmed me. It was when I came home early one day in the middle of the day to find them having sex on my bed like a couple of overexcited porn stars. That's when I realized it. Audrey cheated on me. I mention the little things because pointing out that I didn't have one big warning sign about infidelity makes me sound like an even bigger fool than I actually was. To my credit, after I saw the main thing, I realized that there were a lot of little warning signs that I will be paying attention to in the future. That's if I ever get married again. One of those signs was that a couple of months ago, Audrey began to be kinder to me. Our marriage had reached an addictive point where we began to tease each other a little. Well, not forgetting to point out minor flaws to each other. For example, I often left the toilet seat up, and every time I did this, she felt it was her duty to point it out to me, even if she had to wake me up or catch up with me when I was outside mowing the lawn. For my part, I felt it was important to point out to her that there were still bits of stuck-on food in some places on the dishpans she supposedly washed, even if I had to wake her up to do so. It was just the sweet little things that all middle-aged married people do for each other to show their love. Anyway, a couple of months ago, it was like someone flipped a switch and she no longer criticized me for anything. I logically thought that I had suddenly become a better lover or husband, and that was what made her change. Looking back, I can say that it was quite strange. For example, after I woke her up from her sleep one Sunday morning to gently point out yet another dirty, supposedly clean pan I had taken from the drying rack, she said, "I'm so sorry, Andrew. I can't believe I was so careless. I will try to do this better in the future." And she again put her head on the pillow and fell asleep. What I really should have noticed was that she started encouraging me to play golf with my friends all day on the weekends, and on weekday evenings, drink with work friends. Really, what kind of wife does that? In general, after that, I could no longer make mistakes. Audrey wanted to have sex with me all the time. Well, for example, 3 to 4 times a week, instead of our usual Saturday 5-minute sessions of sexual nirvana. She also wanted to experiment with different things. For example, I asked to experiment with different types of sex. Once, many years ago, I very politely asked to try. In response, she took a butcher knife from the kitchen drawer and waved it threateningly over my crotch. She didn't say a word, but I clearly understood what she meant. So I left everything as is. Now she was the one initiating and she seemed to enjoy it. I remember thinking the first time we were doing this that it had to be unusual, something new, with new sensations and impressions. She supported me in all my desires. Basically, it was like I became a sex god or something. I suddenly became so much better at sex that she became very talkative. Audrey began shouting various curse words. She said something like, "My stallion, hurry up and love me well with this big boy. I miss you so much. I've been waiting for you so much. I want you so much." As far as I could tell, my physiological dimensions remained the same, no larger than on our wedding day. But most of all, she liked to encourage and turn me on with her screams and requests to continue. Now Audrey was always very talkative during sex. But before her change, things were different. Once, when we were making love, I thought I heard her begin to moan softly in ecstasy. But then out of the blue, she said, "I think I'll have a baked potato for lunch tomorrow. After over 10 years of marriage and 2 children, you take what you can get," so I kept going. Another time we had sex in the missionary position. When we were doing this, I always liked to keep her legs straight, and I heard, "Damn, my legs are so pale. I need to sunbathe a little." I have many more examples that I could give, but you still get the point. Sorry, I got a little off topic. So what did I do with this terrible picture? Well, maybe I'm stupid, ignorant, and have been 15 pounds, 7 kilo overweight. But I'm not a weakling. So I did what any self-respecting husband would do in similar circumstances. I sat down on the floor and cried. Kidding. Not really. I said something reasonable and common sense considering the state of shock I was in. Are you serious, bitch? His wife is your best friend. Are you crazy? Looking back, it would have been better if I had fallen on the floor and cried. At least I could get some sympathy points from Audrey. My comment, I think, only encouraged her. Really, what kind of husband is it that, when he discovers some asshole having sex with his wife, the first thing he does is comment on how she's doing it to her best friend's husband? Thank you, Captain Obvious. Seriously? Maybe I should have screamed, "I'll kill you bastards," and go at them both with my 7-iron stick. I really own this 7, or maybe some other manly shit. But again, in my defense, I was shocked by what I witnessed. Not one of them said a word, made not a single attempt to cover themselves. They both looked at me blankly for several seconds. Perhaps it was also difficult for them to grasp the absurdity of what I had just said. Finally, completely at ease, they both crawled out of bed and quietly began to dress. They were not in the least embarrassed by their nakedness. Audrey spoke first. "Jake, honey, I think it's time for you to go. Andrew and I need to talk a little." All this idiot said was, "Fine." He finished getting dressed and walked past me without even asking how I was doing. He casually walked out of my house as if he didn't have any problems in the world. I wanted to say something menacing and smart to his ass, but given my failure a few minutes ago, I wisely decided against it. Audrey began to talk to me patronizingly, as if I were a small child. "I'm sorry you saw this, darling. And it doesn't mean anything. He's just a little fun for me. This doesn't affect my love for you at all. It will pass quickly, blah, blah, blah." All this time, she put on her clothes very casually. I couldn't tell if she was taking the time to make sure I saw the pinkish red bite marks on her chest, or if she didn't notice they existed. Audrey continued to speak to me slowly and soothingly as she began to remove the sheets from what used to be our bed. She began putting them in the laundry basket as if it was her regular laundry day. Come to think of it, this was her typical laundry day. Interesting. I could only stand there with my mouth open and my eyes blinking like a 4-way traffic light. When Audrey finished putting all the soiled linens into the basket, she picked it up and walked past me to the laundry room. "Come with me, dear. This way we can continue discussing our little problem." And, incredibly, I followed her as she instructed, like a little lost puppy. She began to explain to me all the logical reasons why divorce would be bad for the whole family, but especially me. Strangely, Audrey's behavior was not threatening or demanding. She quite calmly pointed out the practical consequences of divorce for family members. Prudence on my part, of course, will go a long way towards avoiding trouble. I think that's what she meant. Audrey began to systematically load the bedding into the washing machine. She added the necessary tablets and liquids, then adjusted the settings and started the wash cycle. "Okay, it's all over now." She turned to me and vigorously rubbed her hands back and forth, as if wiping them clean. "It's better now. I'm so glad that we understand each other. And, lightly patting me on the shoulder, she left. "Oops, it's time for me to pick up the kids," was her parting remark. I stood there like a statue for the better part of 10 minutes, maybe an hour. I have no idea. I was told that when a person is in a state of shock, he does what he knows. It becomes similar to the Samsung PowerBot robot vacuum cleaner with a given program and performs its duties. And that's exactly what I did over the next few weeks. Oh, I told myself I wasn't going to put up with her crap. I lay awake at night thinking of all sorts of ways to kill her and her lover without going to jail. I began to develop cunning surveillance plans to collect more evidence of her infidelity. Then I asked myself, what other proof do I need? And I concentrated my efforts on drawing up detailed and complex plans to take the money and disappear into a tropical paradise, surrounded by scantily clad natives who indulge my every need and fantasy. But what I actually did was nothing. Well, almost nothing. I made sure I never returned from work early again. When it was time to go to work, I left. When it was time for dinner, I ate it. Every Saturday morning, I mowed the lawn as usual. When it was time to sleep, I went to bed. Yes, in your bed next to your wife. Of course, I vowed never to have sex with that cheating bitch again. This promise to himself lasted all 3 nights. Now comes the weirdest part. My wife never said another word about her cohabitation with Jake. It was as if that terrible day was a mirage. Our lovemaking went from 3 or 4 times a week to 5 or 6. It has become more athletic and varied. Her dinner dishes became more exotic and delicious. She was more submissive to me than at any other time in our marriage. Audrey has always been a good mom, but now she has turned into a super mom. She became a real Stepford wife. Oh, I'm sure she was still having sex with Big Jake, as I heard her call him repeatedly that fateful day. I've just never seen any evidence or even a hint that this is the case. I gradually became immune to her other life, which I am sure was her strategy. My life, on the other hand, has never been better. I must admit that I have almost completely put her infidelity out of my mind, happily sticking my head in the sand, so to speak, at least until the kids turn 18. And then this bitch went and destroyed my ramshackle house of cards and my imaginary fantasy world. She invited her lover to our annual barbecue, my annual BBQ. So that brings us to today. I still couldn't believe that my wife had the nerve to invite her lover, his wife and kids to our annual summer barbecue. But I finally had a real plan. It took money and time to put it together, but by D-Day I was ready. I tried to stay inside and close to the front door because this was all supposed to end today. I could tell Audrey was nervous too. She probably suspected that I was up to something because she continued to watch me. I'm sure she was worried and her lover was 30 minutes late. Finally, the doorbell rang. I quickly walked to the door, beating Audrey by a moment, and opened it. Of course, there was this idiot standing there with a grin on his face that no one would mistake for anything else. Before I could say a word, their 2 children, Jess and Jessica, rushed past us, already in swimsuits. They told their parents they were going to join our kids, Katie and Caleb, at the pool. They waved to my wife and me, said hello, and left. While I stood there staring at Jake's sanctimonious grin, Audrey and Addie kissed each other on both cheeks. Audrey, thank you very much for inviting us again. We just love your parties. I briefly wondered why this idiot would have sex with my wife when he was married to this cold-blooded vixen. After a couple of drinks, my wife was within a hair's breadth of a 7 on a scale of 10, but Addie was as close to a 10 as any 2-time mother can get. I hugged her tightly. I must have held her too close for too long because she gave me a puzzled, wary look when I finally let her go. This asshole silently extended his hand. He could hardly contain his glee at how he was embarrassing and humiliating me. We were still standing in the hallway when I reached into my pants pocket and pulled out a flash drive and a roll of quarters. I handed Addie the flash drive and then rolled the quarters into my palm. "Thank you, Andrew, but what is this?" She looked at the flash drive with curiosity. "This is the explanation of why I'm going to do this." I clenched my jaw tightly because I knew it would hurt. I leaned back and with all my strength punched Jake with my $10 fist right in his condescending nose. I had to do it because Jake was younger, stronger, taller, fitter, and 30 pounds superior to me, 13, 6 kilograms. Aren't wives' lovers always like this? What would be the point if they weren't? Why would a woman choose a lover who was as old, soft, and pathetic as her husband? Either way, I wanted to make sure it fell. And he fell. Jake's nose exploded, blood, snot, and cartilage spraying in all directions. And quarters. Quarters flew in all directions. They flew apart and bounced off the tiled floor, creating a hellish noise. The hand did not explode, but it seemed to me that it did. A burning pain pierced all the way to my shoulder, but I had never felt so good in my life. The humiliation of the past few weeks disappeared in an instant. I felt adrenaline rushing through my veins. I guess I felt that survivor's high that the soldiers talked about after the battle because they were lucky enough to survive it. I have no doubt that in a fair fight, Jake would probably kill me. But an asshole having sex with someone else's wife didn't deserve a fair fight. He deserved what he got and more. Let's hope, and more, means his wife divorces his lying ass. She and her children deserve better. If you think about it, me and my children too. Time seemed to flow by in slow motion. Addie screamed in disappointment, but remained frozen in place with beautiful dark brown eyes as big as saucers. Audrey fell to her knees, trying to console her semi-conscious lover, and I noticed that a crowd was beginning to form. Word must have spread quickly because our living room quickly began to fill with vacationers. Some of them were dripping water onto Audrey's new Berber carpet because they had just jumped out of the pool to see what all the fuss was about. "Andrew," Addie screamed, looking at me in disbelief. "Are you crazy? Why on earth did you do this?" She pointed to her husband, squealing like a pig, lying on the floor next to her. She begged me to try to explain what happened. "Because, Addie, your asshole of a hubby has been having sex with my wife for over 6 weeks. There was a loud thump and the Italian tile floor shook slightly as my wife landed on it and fainted. Oh, it should have left a mark. Despite the shock, steam began to pour out of Addie's ears. I found it interesting that she did not doubt the veracity of what I had just told her. Someday I'll have to ask her about it. All this is on a flash drive. There are photos, videos, and audio," I continued, pointing to the small green plastic flash drive she was still clutching in her hand. "It's a good thing we have a big living room because everyone except the little kids flock to watch the show. Small children do not pay attention to anything except their own world, so they just kept swimming and grabbing each other's hands. Both Jake and Audrey began to come to their senses. I started to worry because it didn't seem like the blood flow from his nose was slowing down. Maybe it was just that the blood on the hard floor spread in a thin layer quickly, but it still seemed to me that there was a lot of it. My wife was crying. "How could you do this to me? I told you that this was nonsense, that it would end soon, and no one even knew about it. Because, dear wife, I just wanted you to feel at least a small fraction of the humiliation that I felt. But what about the fact that no one knew?" I turned to face our stunned and whispering audience. I raised my hands to calm the gathered crowd. "I really apologize for the commotion, guys." I pointed to the blood-stained floor where Jake and Audrey lay. "There is no reason to worry. I'd like everyone to get back outside and enjoy the party. But first I have a question for you." I noticed Audrey stand up and step back with her jaw hanging open. "How many people here knew or even suspected that my wife and Big Jake were having an affair?" Several hands slowly began to rise as the suddenly shy partygoers stole glances at each other. There is security in numbers, so as the guests felt better, their hands began to rise higher and higher. "It's clear. It looks like more than half of you were aware to some extent. Thanks for your help. Now please, let's get back to the party. This will be our last party. So I really want you all to have a good time. The table will soon be full." It was at that moment that Addie punched the shocked Audrey right in the nose with essentially the same result as my punch to Jake's nose. Everyone present jumped sharply and shouted, "Oh!" when she collapsed on the floor for the second time. True, this time in a sitting position. Audrey pinched her nose, throwing her head back, desperately trying to stop the blood flowing from it as she continued to howl. Addie leaned over, trying to help her shit-deep husband to his feet. She spoke with a controlled fury that was a little unnerving. "Listen to me, Jake. Get your ass off the floor and go to the emergency room. After this, I don't care where you go, as long as you don't go home. The kids and I will stay and enjoy the party. Also, when my ex-best friend stops crying and bleeding, she and I will talk a little. But I need to go to... You broke my nose! Nobody cares, Audrey. No matter how big your nose is, I probably made it look better on your fat face. Now come with me so we can talk in private. She grabbed my wife by the hair and literally dragged her like a caveman across the floor towards the back of the house. Audrey kicked, screamed, and cried the whole way. I'm sure it took a lot of strength for Addie to do that, but honestly, the floor was pretty slippery with blood and other crap, so I actually giggled a little when I saw a couple of quarters stuck to Audrey's face when she slipped past. I know I'm a terrible person. Okay, that last snarky comment from Addie about Audrey's face was probably unfair. My wife's nose was, a little prominent, but her face wasn't oily. I liked her nose. It looked like Jennifer Grey's beak. I've always been partial to Baby, but I was sure that after the blow she received, Audrey's nose would also be forever changed. It's a shame. So sad. This is her problem. Besides, judging by the look on Addie's face, Audrey could be in more pain before this evening is over. I've always liked Addie, but now my admiration for her is off the charts. Unlike me, when faced with a shocking situation, she went about her business like a boss. Her quick, decisive actions and statements seemed to impress everyone. So the crowd began to head out to the backyard for hamburgers and hot dogs. I even heard old Mrs. Johnson say to her husband as she took him out, "I told you it would be a great party, Jack. Let's go find a margarita." I was torn. To be honest, I was a little worried about Audrey's safety in Addie's clutches, but someone had to do the grilling. People are hungry. I chose the grill as my priority. I continued to sneak glances towards the house, but since there were no sounds of breaking furniture, no dishes, or screams of pain from inside, I continued to perform the duties of the grill master. I don't want to brag, but people always say, I make the best burgers in town. The main thing is to use real firewood or briquettes if necessary, but never gas. This is because if you use gas, a real baby will not eat anything cooked on it. Anyway, my other secret ingredient was marijuana. Okay, I'm just kidding. In fact, it is a special mixture of various spices, 3 types of grated cheeses, and Worcestershire sauce. The meat, of course, must be fresh, in no case frozen. The upper part of the tenderloin must be cut in a ratio of 80-20. Usually all the guys would come up to me while I was standing at my post working on the grill. They were always trying to find out the secret ingredients from me. I never gave them away because then they wouldn't be secret ingredients, would they? But today, none of the guys approached me. No one, even just to chat. It made me think, why did this happen? Come on, now it doesn't matter anymore. I've already done my kids' DNA, so who cares? However, most of their wives have at some point approached me and expressed sympathy for my problems. They asked if there was anything they could do to help and all that stuff that moms do. I think it's at the genetic level. 2 of them made sure that I had their cell phone numbers just in case. At one point, Addie, with Jess and Jessica in tow, walked purposefully toward me. To be honest, I was a little scared. I mean, after the right hand she nailed Audrey with, and the fact that even though I was just a messenger, I seriously screwed up her world. So I took a couple of steps back just in case. But there was no need to worry. She wrapped her arms around me and hugged me tightly. If I weren't a man, I might think that cuddling is a little out of character for a barbecue. She squeezed me so tightly that I felt the warmth of her body on my chest. When she finally let me go, she said with disgust, "Sorry, Andrew, that we ate and ran away. But it seems my idiot husband can't even check himself into the hospital without my help." She shook her head with distaste. "He better get used to doing everything himself." At that moment, I remembered Audrey. I looked over Addie's shoulder at the house again. You didn't kill her, did you, Addie?" I heard her children giggle slightly at the question. I looked at them. Each of them held a freshly washed quarter in their hands. "No, Andrew. I didn't even touch her anymore. I simply explained to her the facts of life and what I was going to do next." Okay. Of course, I was wondering what what next meant, but I decided to leave everything as it was. The three ran out of the yard to meet their Lyft driver. I wonder what Addie said to my ex-wife. I'll have to ask her sometime. About 20 minutes later, just as I was finishing cleaning the debris from the grates while everyone was still stuffing their faces, I saw my wife shyly approaching me. She didn't have any obvious new physical injuries, but she looked a bit like a raccoon with her two black eyes. They would definitely get worse over the next few days, I thought. Her nose was already swollen and twice its usual noticeable size. Blood-soaked pieces of toilet paper shoved up each nostril, along with makeup running down her cheeks, didn't help her appearance either. "I've never been so humiliated in my life," she snorted. "I'm sorry, honey, but in my defense, I told you it wouldn't last. If I had known that it upset you so much, I would have quit. How could you disgrace me like that?" I started to get annoyed, but she continued. "I mean, this day can't get any worse," she whined nasally, looking around and noticing that everyone was looking in our direction. They were probably hoping for more fireworks. "Yes, maybe," I interrupted knowledgeably, continuing to furiously scrape the grill. "Are you Audrey Smith?" said a slightly angelic-looking lady in her 20s who quietly approached us and asked for my wife. "Yes, you've been served." And she handed Audrey the ubiquitous 812x 11-inch manila envelope and 21.628 centimeter. There was another thud as Audrey fell to the ground again. Luckily, this time she was lying on the grass when she fell. I'm pretty sure I heard someone exclaim, "Number 3, maybe it was me?" "Thanks for the hamburgers, Mr. Smith." And the cute, round-cheeked little server process happily jumped out of the gate. I felt like the king of the world standing there with a Brookstone spatula in my hands, a chef's hat tilted at just the right angle, and a grease-stained complimentary Los Angeles Dodgers grill robe. I puffed out my chest proudly, looking majestically around my kingdom. A real man,